Hi, welcome to the A.D.K Rock and Metal channel. My name is Kirk Horton, and I have a special guest with us today. Some of you will instantly recognize him as the former keyboard player and a songwriter in English prog metal giants A.D.K. He is Diego Tejeida, and he joins us today. We're going to be talking about his new band Temic, and they released their debut album, Terror Management Theory, via Season of Mist on the 17th of November. Before we get into the questions, Diego, you told me off camera where you're based, just in case there are some people that are unaware about where you're living these days. Where are you at this moment in time?
So I'm based, as we were discussing, I'm based in Mexico City, and this has been my home since 2013. So you were mentioning off camera that, oh, so you moved back to Mexico after you parted ways with A.D.K. It's like, no, I've been here for a long time. Yeah, so this is home.
I just assumed that you were still in London, because everyone thinks of London when they think of A.D.K, don't they?
Yeah, I mean, London, I mean, England in particular was a very important place for me. I still feel it's like my second home. My wife was just there visiting a relative a couple of weeks ago, and I was just telling her, yeah, you have to do this and that. Just go to charity shops, buy some stuff. And I used to live in all over the place, and I feel so familiar in England. It's a very important place for me, but I haven't been a long time now. I do miss some elements from there. But yeah, I moved before I went there as a student. I was 18 years old when I moved there, and I was just trying to build a career. So it was not, I didn't move there because of A.D.K. I met A.D.K along the way, but I was doing so many other things back in the day as well.
Oh, just out of interest, did you move to England then back in the day to study music?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was my big shot. Like, I was always there at school, but I always knew I wanted to be a musician, and I knew I didn't want to study in Mexico, and also I had a chance to study in America, but I didn't want to do that, and somehow I looked at the option of moving to England. It was the first time I was on my own and then traveled, and I the first time I lived alone. But yeah, it was a lot of fun, and I went there to study music, and then I was just trying to make a career happen. So yeah, it was very interesting. I mean, the first years I was there were very depressing, especially the first year. Being a student, being poor, I didn't know what I was getting myself into. I live in a council house, and I didn't know what a council house was. And like 2 months later, after living in that council house, um, I was renting, of course, and it got broke and they stole my passport and all my money, and I was like, okay. So I had a rough first year living there, but it's definitely it's what made me who I am in a way. Yeah.
It is almost prohibitive now, isn't it? The cost of living, like New York and San Francisco, London is exorbitant.
Absolutely.
Where were you? Where did you move to in London? Were you in South London at the beginning?
Yes, I was all over. I love the fact that you assumed I was in South London, but yeah,
Yeah, you got
I was
Burgum.
absolutely. I mean, I was all over the place. That particular incident that happened in the Walthamstow, and I was just there. That's what my budget could pay, and I found this flat which I rented with a couple of friends, and we didn't know what it was. And after living there like a month, we were like, okay, so a lot of people seem to really enjoy the drugs around here. It was,
Yeah.
but it was what it was. I'm from Mexico City as well, so it's not exactly, a calm place. So I'm kind of used to some elements that I saw there. But yeah, very interesting. I lived there. I lived in South London. I lived in Eltham. I lived in Blackheath, which I really liked. The last years I was in somewhere in East London. I don't remember, but I was all over the place. I moved houses every 6 months, basically, because when they were putting the rents up, I had to find a new place, and I was a student, so not a lot of money to spend, so I was just moving around.
Yeah. Well, the first question, I just need to clear something up before we talk about terror management theory and Temic and your future plans. Haken, you announced you were leaving in 2021, and it
Right.
was that classic artistic differences. So I think a lot of Haken fans, myself included, probably looked at the Virus, the last album that you appeared on, and then we've looked at how Haken have evolved on Fauna. So my question is, tell me if I'm reading this wrong. Are you pushing against the direction where they're going heavier? Because Vector and Virus are certainly, there's a lot more Fear Factory riffing in those albums compared with The Mountain and the earlier stuff. What were the artistic differences?
I don't really have much more to add in here. It was a much more complex decision than just like, oh, the music is a problem. It just comes to a position in your life that, I mean, now I'm in my mid-30s, like approaching the 40s. So it was a decision that I kind of started feeling a bit disconnected with the band and the music in general. And I realized, okay, if I'm to do something new, if I need to start a new page, this is the moment to do it. I cannot carry on waiting. And of course, the decisions are not easy to make. I spent big portion of my life dedicating 100% of my attention and work and into this band. Like the degree of the success that A.D.K has is due to all the efforts that everyone put into it, mine included, for 13 years. So not an easy decision, but it's much more complex than just what, it was a decision that I'm not content here. I don't feel connected with this. And I feel like I need to do this. And, it's just listen to yourself and realizing this is the time to do it. So let's make it happen. So basically, I don't really have much more to add than that, but this is kind of a little further explanation of what's happening.
See, in my opinion, Virus is the best album in the A.D.K discography, and that's the last one you appeared on. So that's what surprised me. And I think, if I'm right in thinking, there was unanimous praise for that album. I don't remember seeing any negative reviews of the 2020 A.D.K album, Virus.
I would be lying if I told you that I know about this. At that point, I was for my let's just call it. I knew at that time I was gonna separate from them, so I was not really following any more of that. It was just starting to make that process of start looking into something else. At that point, I think by the time the album was released, I was already working with the Temic album. I was already writing for it. So, and I am that kind of people that when I make a decision and when I do something, I don't look back. I just start working towards the next thing. And, I just carry on doing that. And I'm used to this. Like I told you, I moved countries several times. I've been all over the place. So, changes, I know that are complicated, but the most important thing, as I mentioned, is always the beginning. Like I mentioned, the first year I lived in England was very difficult. So big changes are complicated, are challenging. So you have to focus your whole energy into what actually you are doing or you're decided to do. So at that point, I was not really paying attention to the reviews or really like how the album was going. I was just working towards the next thing. And in general, I'm like that. Now we're talking about Temic and the debut album is out. This is not necessarily a secret, but we've already started working on the second album. So, that's the only way to keep afloat. And the way I've learned to kind of work and cope with everything in life is just to carry on doing what you're doing. So that's also my answer. I was not even looking into the reviews or the feedback the album got.
Fair play. I just thought I would labor the point because I'm a huge fan of A.D.K's music, of which you were a big part. But yeah, we're here to talk about Temic, aren't we? So my next question, I'm really just going to read out a quote from the press release because this intrigued me. So I don't know if you even know about this in the press release. It said the aim is to create, with Temic, progressive music that is heavily influenced by high energy electronic music, but arranged and orchestrated for a 5-piece modern prog rock metal band. When I read that, I was thinking, do I have any high energy electronic music albums in my collection? What kind of electronic music inspired this album?
Yes, I'm aware of that, and that was kind of part of the initial. I mentioned this many times that when Eric and I initially talked about the idea of this band, the first thing we decided or we talked about was the vision of the musical aspect of the band, the musical vision. And what I bring to the table is those influences. And nowadays, I honestly don't really listen to metal that much anymore. This is the thing I've been listening. And on the side, I've always been very interested in electronic music. But it is kind of a dirty word, right? Especially for the rock bands and synthesizers and this whole idea that synthesizers are not real music instruments, right? That you play a button and the music is done by itself, right? But there are a lot of really, really amazing artists. One of my biggest influence in terms of sound design and energy, like you mentioned, is this a duo called Infected Mushroom. Those guys are absolutely incredible, and if you listen to the music, they have a very vast catalog, but you can clearly hear a lot of metal influences, which is really fun, right? Like those guys are getting influenced by the metal aspect, but doing like this very, very cool EDM music, sometimes experimental, sometimes just plain EDM, but really, really interesting. They're kind of the Dream Theater of sound, just to put it one way. So Dream Theater are, the technical gods and whatever. These guys, to me, like they are the technical gods in terms of sound design and noise, and it's absolutely amazing. So definitely them. Um, but like, Pendulum, and I was living in England when the whole dubstep movement was happening. Before it became the bro step thing, for people who are not familiar with it, dubstep started like a underground genre and became like this kind of mainstream thing. But I was in England, and there was all these events. It was super interesting, and so all those elements, a lot of people like I was mentioned, like Boards of Canada, um, Aphex Twin, but I mentioned Pendulum already. There's a lot of techno guys, but just to mention a few of them, I think that's enough. Mention these 3, 4 influences right now.
Yeah, I'm glad you clarified that because most of my record collection are metal bands, but I was looking at the electronic artists I have. Boards of Canada, yeah, I can hear some of that. I mean, when I think of Boards of Canada, I always just think of the influence they had on that Radiohead Kid A album. Clearly, Radiohead were listening to them, weren't they, when they went in that direction? So
Absolutely.
yeah, it's good that you just clarified that because I was like high energy electronic music. I guess the Prodigy, yeah, Pendulum. So yeah,
Prodigy as well, of course.
yeah. So it's good to. I just want our viewers to understand as well, because I mean, I would put this under the umbrella term prog metal. And there's a lot of heavy rock, but yeah, there are a lot of textures, and can you use that term sound design? And I see
Yeah.
that a lot. What is that? Can you just define what that means? If for example, in the CD booklet, we'll say Diego Tejeida, keyboard, probably lyrics, but it will say sound design. What does that mean?
Well, I mean, it's a very vast term, and without trying to get too academic, it's a vast world. It can be sound design is the guys who do the Foley artists, right? That they record the sound of a guy breaking his foot for a movie, and do that with the letters. That is part of it, or a monster and a monster voice, all that kind of stuff. In this particular case, I believe that part of my expression as a keyboard player is the sounds I use. And since, I don't know, since I can remember, my focus has always been to create my own sound. So I've never used, I never use presets. I never buy a synthesizer and use whatever is in there. Actually, I work doing that. I work designing sounds. So when you buy a synthesizer, you actually, there's some nice sounds that are people design. But this is something that I think in the progressive world genre sometimes, very often gets overlooked, right? So a lot of keyboard players focus so much on the shredding, on playing fast and all that stuff, but they use the same keyboards with the same sounds, all the stock presets. So again, to me, like thinking almost like an electronic musician, I'm playing in a kind of instrumental band that of course the playing is very important, but if you think about electronic musicians, what matters is the sound. They don't really play that much. They don't really, have, some of them have kind of bad technique if you see them playing. The hands are very stiff. But it is the sounds they produce, the atmospheres they create, the emotional expression that gets created through sounds. That is how they focus the expression. So that's something that I've taken a lot, and that's something that I do on a day-to-day basis, and that's something that I try to also bring into this genre. I'm not sure if any other people are doing it or not, but that for me, that's always been a very strong ethos, and it makes my process being very, very long. For this record, there's one sound, the main sound on the track "Acts of Violet," took me something ridiculous, like 10 hours to craft. It was just focusing on things that most people don't even care about, but for me, it has to be perfect and paint the picture. So for this record as well, things like the vocal reverb and the ambience the vocals are creating, all that stuff, I send that to the mixing engineer too. It's like, hey, look, I'm hearing this. If you want to try something different, feel free, but I'm going to print this for you as well because I'm feeling like this will be part of the record and this is creating this part of the atmosphere. So the expression is not only the music and the notes I'm playing, it's the notes. Sorry, it's the sound that gets also imprinted into a record or a song or whatever. Does that paint a picture?
Yeah, it does. Because I'm actually wearing a Depeche Mode t-shirt, so I've been
Nice.
watching a lot of documentaries about the making of the classic albums. So that does make sense because they're mid '80s stuff, like for example, Black Celebration from 1986. You said that you don't get a keyboard and just use whatever the presets are. They were doing that, weren't they, with sampling and creating their own soundscapes, like the song Stripped, which is on this t-shirt. Starts with an exhaust pipe of I don't know what car it is, slowed down by 2 octaves. So would that be considered sound design then, if we use that term?
100%. 100%.
Yeah.
That is part of it, of course, yes.
Yeah, that makes sense then. Good. You've cleared that up as well. It's just something I've seen. I've never really had a definition of it. So Season of Mist, let's go to the record label then that have signed Temic. Great record label, known certainly for extreme metal, death metal, black metal, but there has been a push recently for them to really scoop up the best prog metal bands out there. And they even signed that side project. You'll be friends with that band Threshold, I imagine, won't you? The English prog metal band. Do you know that band?
Is that with Damien Wilson, right?
I can't remember who's in the band. They're like Haken. They're big in Germany, so I'll be surprised if you've never.
No, I think that one. I mean, I apologize if I say it wrong, but I'm pretty sure. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, I wish I knew if he was in that band. I don't know.
Well, it is. I'm pretty sure he is, but like if I'm wrong, apologies to everyone. Don't crucify me, people from the YouTube. Okay.
I should know this as well, so I'll apologize in advance. But there was a side project called Oblivion Protocol that Season of Mist released this year, and the album's called The Fall of the Shires. And I think you're operating in a similar paradigm of melody to them. I don't think you sound like them. So how did the arrangement come about with Season of Mist? Did they contact you? Did you contact them? How did that happen?
This was through our management. So the first, being the first album and the new band and stuff, there's a lot of other steps that you have to take, other than just write the music. So one of them was, luckily Eric, myself, and the other guys as well, they have been to a degree in the industry, so we know the things that need to be done, right? So one of the things is just getting management, and we landed with Glassville Music, which Rob, the one running Glassville, he's absolutely amazing, and he's the one who was looking into options for record labels, and he brought up Season of Mist. I said, like, well, these guys are interested. There were all the people he brought up, and he said, like, I feel these guys are really good. Like, I'm getting a good vibe with them. And honestly, my first, I think, reservation was exactly that. It's like, oh man, it seems like there's like true black metal guys. I know we're not true enough. We're gonna get crucified because this is not black metal at all, right? But Rob told us, this label is opening a new kind of prog branch. They have other bands, like, they have Cynic, they have Voyager, they have, as you mentioned, they have other bands that start looking at their artists, and not everyone is a black metal, not everyone is death metal. They have really interesting, even non-metal, folky sounding bands. So I was like, that's fine. But, now working with them, it's been absolutely amazing. They're a great level, as you mentioned, but the level of communication that's inside and the relationship like we are all forming with these guys is great. Like everyone in the band everyone in the label is young, so it also keeps it fresh. They know what they're doing, so they know about like the social media and when to post things. And first time whole career that I got a message from the label boss saying, hey, really looking forward to this album. This album is amazing. I'm listening to it every day. And this is not something you get all the time. Normally label bosses are like, they're not trying to let you know that they like your music, so just to kind of keep you on your toes. And Michael has been absolutely supportive, super cool. So yeah, like absolutely no regrets. Super happy to be with them.
Surely it would have been easy because you've got a working relationship with Inside Out Music, which is the prog rock, prog metal label, isn't it? It even has its own sound. For example, Temic could easily tour with Caligula's Horse. It just sounds like Inside Out Music, their label. Did you ever explore that option? That surely would have been easy, wouldn't it? Just to strike a deal with them.
I think it's an option that at some point came up, But again, there was many options, like all the labels. You know, they have usual suspects, but also you have to think in terms of what's the best for the identity of this band. You know, what you want to create. So all in all, of all the options, definitely like the option of Season Mist was the one that made the most sense.
Yeah, it's just prestige to me. As soon as I get that in my inbox, new album, Season Mist, it gets reviewed straight away. It is to me the #1 metal label in the world for the quality and caliber of their artists. So
Absolutely.
let's talk about Frederick Bergerson, your singer. So he's from the band Marathon, isn't he?
Right.
How difficult was it to find a singer for this project? Because it's clear from day one, you and Eric knew that the vocalist was going to be absolutely pivotal to holding the melodies together. How difficult was it to find the right person?
Honestly, not difficult at all. In the sense, it was the most difficult because we didn't know him. I mean, I knew Simon from before. Of course, I knew Eric. Well, Simon's the one who suggested Frederick. When Eric and I talked at the beginning, we had some ideas of what kind of sound we wanted for the vocals. So we were like, I don't really imagine someone with an operatic voice, or I don't imagine someone with this or that sound. I think it would be nice someone with, this kind of almost poppy voice, emotional, that can have power if needed. And this kind of, when I heard Frederick singing, I thought he was absolutely perfect, because he has that when he wants to, this very emotive, very intimate, almost pop-like voice, which is absolutely stunning and beautiful. He has a lot of control, but 1 minute later you see him just singing his lungs out and having all this power and those emotions. So he has all the range that we wanted. So Simon is the one who brought him up and said, like, yeah, I worked with this guy before. He's really good. He's a great dude. He has such an amazing presence on stage as well. Look at his video. He's so energetic, because that's also something that we wanted, right? Kind of keep the energy going on stage instead of looking like we're glued to an instrument. For people who have seen me live, you probably know that I pay a lot of attention to be in the moment and enjoy, and use your body as also part of your expression, not only your notes, not only what you're playing. So seeing people that also do that take that into account, and they open to express with their bodies. Simon being an amazing drummer, he's so animated when you see him playing live. It's such a joy watching him playing, right? And I think when Eric and I started watching Frederick videos, I was like, oh man, this guy's got such a great energy. Like, that's very energetic, such frontman. So he was perfect. We sent him one of the first demos of the track Count Your Losses. It was a different track back then, and he just sent it back, and we're like, okay, right, yeah, you're in. Definitely, you tick all the boxes. So yeah, it was not that difficult. It was just simple, but it was exactly what we were looking for, and better. We were like, oh, we didn't know we wanted this, but this is actually amazing on top of it.
Yeah, but certainly in contemporary progressive metal, the singers are just incredible, aren't they? Tesseract, Periphery, Caligula's Horse, Pain of Salvation. The singers, the technical standards, which often we don't really pay enough attention, certainly in heavier forms of music. Because think how difficult it is to impose that level of melody and technical ability on what can sometimes be chaotic music. It is easier to scream over that. So I think when you listen to Tesseract and Frederick on this album by Temic, to me, that is an achievement in itself, to get your voice heard and to be powerful and project and have all these different textures. So yeah, I just wanted to say at that point there, he really does enhance the musical experience, Frederick, on this record with his ability.
I would say, though, like on this record as well, it was a conscious effort. So, as you mentioned, the vocals were very important, choosing who was going to do vocals, because we knew from the very beginning we wanted to write songs or base our music when we consider good songwriting, which is impactful, honest lyrics, and, catchy, strong vocal melodies, and, good harmonies. But that is a core of it. So I think sometimes you were mentioning that some people don't pay attention to vocals or don't pay attention to lyrics. I think most of the time, sometimes prog is music for musicians, right? Yeah. So guitar players are just like, you listening to the guitar player and be like, oh my god, he played those 15, 16, man, and he's going now Dorian and now Lydian, and and which is cool. I mean, I was like that when I was younger as well, that I wanted to show off. And I remember when I was in college, I had these amazing piano players, teachers, and jazz players, super tasty players, and they were like, dude, you're playing too much. Yeah, you might impress your friends with that. Give me something interesting. I was like, all right, my ego's being crushed. But now, like, I understand that. And that's one of the things that Eric and I talked about, said, yeah, we've done enough shredding. We can do it. But let's not focus our music in that. Let's not focus our music on being bombastic for the sake of it. Just, I don't want to create music so that other academics can go like, oh my God, did you hear that they modulated to quintuplet? Wow, that's so cool. I want to create music that has a context, that has emotions. So if the song needs shredding, well, perfectly capable of doing it. Like Eric was saying, like, yeah, I get it. If there's need for that, I'll shred. If there's no need for it, I'm happy just to play just tasty chords, and he did that on the record. So the songs on the album were written around the vocal melody. So the vocal melodies are the king. They're on the center. So the message, the lyrics are on the center. So yeah, that's why we brought stuff around. And oftentimes when it's music written by musicians, focused for musicians, there's not a lot of space for the vocals. Because you're just focusing on so much, making super interesting for the guitar players, and the guitar players are zoning out, the keyboards are zoning out the vocals, so I can listen just the guitar. But then maybe the song is not as strong. Maybe the lyrics are not good. Maybe you're singing about something that's completely, pointless, right? So yeah, that was also the aim. Go into that direction of trying to write something more honest and try not to. Well, definitely the focus was not to show how many notes per minute we can play or how many different modes and time signatures we can get into. But if it's needed, we can do it. But if it isn't, it's fine.
So, sorry, this is a cheeky question. So, because you were using this as an example, I wouldn't know. Is there a song on this album that goes from Dorian mode to Lydian mode?
uh, Dorian mode to Lydian.
I wouldn't know how to identify it, but
on the top of my head, I don't think there's Dorian to Lydian. I don't know. Maybe. I don't know. I honestly don't know.
It's just funny how you use that, as like a throwaway example of how musicians will listen to the record. Let's because you're the keyboard player and sound designer, if we use that noun.
Yeah.
Which songs on the album started as keyboard ideas and then evolved from there? Is that how it works? Because you're clearly the main songwriter, aren't you?
Yeah, I mean, for this record, I was in the position that I was able to provide the most of the initial demos. So yes, normally the way this album was written is like someone, aka myself or sometimes Eric, whatever, will send each other the initial demos. So these initial demos, the rule was that, well, not rule, but the way I was doing it and the way I'm writing music now is that it's not a song or it's not an initial idea unless you have two different sections and you have a vocal melody. That to me is super important because, I can write good riffs, but like if they don't have a meaning, if they don't have a context, they're worthless. So yeah, I mean, I play a little bit of guitar. I mean, I'm ashamed to say I play guitar standing next to someone like Eric, who's like a monstrous guitar player, but I play a little bit, and actually I had to kind of pick up my technique on the guitar because I haven't played in a long time. I bought myself an 8-string guitar and I started kind of practicing again so I could write. But yeah, like the demos would be, program drums, just some very basic guitar, some very basic keyboards as well. I was not trying to spend so much time on making the sounds from the beginning, but just kind of paint a picture of where I was going. But the main thing was first on those initial demos is to illustrate what I would call the blueprints of the roller coaster, right? So for me, like writing a song is like a roller coaster. So first it's like you put in all these building blocks and you say, okay, so at this point I'm going to go here and then down. And that was the initial ideas of the demos. And, then I would send it to Eric, or Eric would send me his initial ideas to me. And we would just craft that and incorporate then the performance of everyone. So before we hit the studio, we had this very very fleshed out demos. It could have been the record, honestly, but having those very fleshed out demos allowed us to hit the studio and everyone knew what we were doing. And the actual final record had a better, of course, much better quality than the initial demos. So yeah, that was in a nutshell the process that this album had.
Yeah, I always wanted to know how it works because I was thinking surely you must be putting riffs on those demos, obviously programmed drums. Because I was just thinking, what's it like when Eric receives it? So, like you said, there's an outline there. You're not telling him how to play. It's like this is what it's probably going to sound like. Can you work within this key? So yeah, that's interesting. That. So, at what point did the lyrics come into the song? Does that before or after the vocal melodies?
For most of them, the lyrics were last, the actual lyrics. So, as you were mentioning, I would send my basic ideas of like, oh, I thought about this kind of riff, or maybe I imagine the guitars following this, and Eric was like, yes, not even only focusing on the guitars, but maybe focus on the whole thing, because also Eric is an amazing keyboard player. So, that's amazing, that we have this level, and he's a great producer, so he has this vision of not only a guitar player, but he has this director vision. Instead of, as I was mentioning, instrumentalists focus so much on their instrument, and Eric has this global vision of what's going on, what the vocals are doing. He's the one who produces the backing vocals, for instance. So we had this MO going on. Sometimes he will, suggest some changes on the arrangement, or sometimes I will say, look, I feel like this section could be stronger, or I feel like I'm starting to lose the interest halfway through this section. I feel like we need something. So like, okay, I'll try something, and we had this back and forth. So for the lyrics, so normally the way I write in the demos I sent, I normally don't like to spend first too much time on things, and writing lyrics is something that takes me a long time. But when I'm starting writing and I'm demoing stuff, I hear a vocal melody. So instead of spending a long time then sitting down and writing the actual lyrics, what are going to be final, I just sometimes have lyrics and very ridiculous lyrics, whatever comes out, but I'm illustrating the vocal melody. Or, that song Acts of Violence, the first demo I sent, the working title was called The Magic Doo-Doo, because I record myself just singing the vocal melody, but just saying doo-doo. Do 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 do. That's all I did for the whole song. But at least it paints a picture, so oh, I see where the vocal melody is going to be. So just in the end, that's when you have an idea and you have a sound of how the vowels you imagine they're gonna sound on the actual lyrics. Because words have sounds, they have rhymes, they are part of the musical expression. So sometimes you get this as target points, and when you start writing, you start realizing, oh, this is kind of cool. And normally when I'm actually focusing on lyrics, I already have the melody, so it's all about fleshing out that melody and focusing 100% on the lyrics and then the message of the song. So that way I don't have to do everything at once, because it's a very daunting task.
Great example then of what you're saying. The final track, Mothala. Is it Mothala or Mothala that you pronounce?
Mothala, yeah.
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 Da, 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 da. And then the climb. Da, 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 da. So clearly you had that in your head before you wrote the lyrics, didn't you?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Stand out for me. As soon as I heard that, I was like, wow, it's like another brick in the wall. You've already got, the child choir in your head.
Absolutely.
Song. What are the lyrics at that point there? Sorry, because I don't have the CD yet, so I don't have the inlay. Do you know that part? What the chorus? Do do do. What's Frederick saying in those lyrics? Can you remember?
Yeah, of course. We'll fight through the darkest night. Mothala will be our only guide. Right. And then we'll sing this lullaby to the skies as our final cry.
Yeah, because you've just enunciated it in the rhythm there as well, without even thinking about it.
Yeah.
Short and snappy, isn't it? The end to it. It's so sophisticated. The way you do it.
I appreciate it.
When I heard it, I was like, you had this in your head before you'd even written the lyrics, and it's a triumph. It really is. So when I saw the title of the album, I thought this sounds like an undergraduate textbook for a politics and international relations course, terror management theory. Clearly, it's actually about the individual, isn't it? So, what is the central? Is there a central story to terror management theory?
Well, first of all, there's two parts to this. First of all, terror management theory is a social psychology theory that actually exists. And funnily enough, like a couple of weeks ago, one of the authors of this theory wrote publicly on YouTube. We have this full streaming of the album and said like, "Oh, I'm super grateful that you guys were influenced and named this album after the theory we wrote." So super cool. So in a nutshell, the terror management theory is a theory that proposes that humans, the thought of our own mortality causes us terror. Like thinking about our mortality causes us anxiety. So how, the theory tries to illustrate how we deal with that anxiety that, our own mortality causes us. And this came at the end. As I was mentioning in the terms of writing lyrics, when we wrote the music, we had a clear vision what we wanted. The lyrics was not something we discussed from the get-go. And normally, the way I write music, and I write lyrics in particular, is when I actually get to the lyric stage, I mentioned before the melody and stuff, when I get to the lyric stage, I try to get in that zone when I'm not really thinking too much about it, in the sense of I'm not trying to be too clever. I don't have maybe like a first intention. And also sometimes with the provisional lyrics, you already kind of have you like a couple of words you like, or like a phrase you like that you keep, so that end up happening. But then I start kind of writing, and at some point I step back and I look at what I'm writing, and I'm like, oh, I'm writing about this. Like, it's like the song reveals itself. And this is a technique, like a psychology technique called the free association, right? Like when someone tells you a word and say the first word that comes into your head, and you say, and that's kind of a way to kind of access some areas of your mind that maybe you're not controlling as much when you say it on the first moment. So that's kind of the process that you look out and you realize what you're writing about, and then you shape that. That's when the creative form kind of takes place, when you're like, oh, I'm writing about this, and I like this, and I'm tying this together, and I'm gonna write this about. So when I started looking into the lyrics again, that I was writing, I was like, oh my God, the element of death is underneath this whole thing. But not as a negative aspect. That's something that I kind of also want to clarify. As I mentioned, we're not black metal or thrash metal talking about death and destruction. I've been obsessed with that idea for quite some years now, and it is, influenced by positive existentialism, and it is trying to be a reminder of your own mortality, and trying to be a reminder that time is finite, and there's no point in spending that time being fearful, being afraid of change. We discussed that a minute ago when you were asking me, why do I make a career change? Being fearful, being afraid, or not living to the fullest, because our time is finite. So, and all the people around you is. So that is kind of the outlook of the album, is to try to be a positive contemplation of it, like a reminder of like, remember, this is gonna happen, and you have no time. You don't have time to not fight. You have no time to be afraid. You don't have time to be hiding. You don't have time to be waiting for the perfect occasion to do X, Y, and Z. This is it. So in a nutshell, when I started kind of reading the lyrics back, it's like, wow, this is all about it. And lyrics from songs like Falling Away, it's probably the most existentialist lyrics in the whole album, but the music is kind of happy. But you read the lyrics are probably the only lyrics in the album that mention the word death. But yeah, that's the whole element, or the almost a spectrum of death is lying underneath the lyrics. So that made perfect sense with the title of the album, Terror Management Theory. And also, this album was written at the beginning of the pandemic, right? So there was a lot of that happening, a lot of anxiety. People my age and people I knew died during the pandemic too. So that's something that you also see very close. And so the whole thing really seemed to be without me noticing, orbiting at least my head when that was happening. And the lyrics that Eric wrote seemed to be on the same line too. So it was very interesting.
Yeah, because when I without reading the lyrics, when I get to the last third of this album, you're right. There's definitely an existentialism to this album. It's felt to me like it was a triumph over self-doubt, and the
Abs-
musical timbers really do support that, don't they? Because you're right. As human beings, I believe that we do have a natural dread of the future, and by that, it's almost like there's this false paradigm between short-term thinking and long-term thinking. With that, you get overthinking, don't you? What you're saying there is, yes, death will claim us all, but if you are constantly thinking, what will happen to Mexico City in 200 years' time if X, Y, and Z continues to happen? What will happen to London if X, Y, and Z continues to happen? That is just going to create so much anxiety and fear in you as an individual, isn't it? Because how can you think about what's going to happen in 300 years' time? Is that have I kind of that's just the sense I got from it. It's about purging yourself of actually overthinking.
I mean, absolutely is part of it. I think it's both ways, right? Like the people who suffer from anxiety, they always try to control what's going to happen in the future, and but at the same time, you live your life regretting the past or being afraid of what's happening, and that's kind of the whole point. As in the one hand, you don't want to be like, oh, I'm gonna die. Who cares? I want to just sell my house and get divorced and go live in the moon. That's something kind of ridiculous. But the aspect of, as you were mentioning, as making amends with yourself, like that, you mentioned the track Mothala. That track is about that. It has kind of a double meaning of like, layered meaning, if you want to say that. That in a way, the first part is making amends with your inner self. That at the end of the day, what makes us human is this struggle that we all go through. So we all struggle, we all fear, from a kid that is afraid of the closet to an old guy who's afraid that maybe, or regrets that maybe he didn't do enough in his life, or, when you're in the teens, that you are afraid of not belonging and not, finding friends. So we all, to a degree, at different stages of our lives, are struggle with different things. But that is exactly what makes us human, right? Like that is exactly, and the moment you realize we're all fighting alone, but we're all fighting, there's also a thing that kind of brings you into kind of almost like a community. And that's what when the choir in Mothal is happening, that's what it tries to represent with that aspect. But at the end of the day, it's this existential element of like, yes, you're gonna die. Yes, everything ends. But this is the experience. And this is the experience that you're gonna take. So if you're gonna do that, you might as well do it. Because you're not eternal. And that's what he was saying about thinking about the future. I think sometimes we think, oh, maybe next year I'll want to try taking that course I wanted to take. Maybe I'm gonna make amends with that friend, or maybe it's time for me to make a change and quit my job or do a crazy thing. But maybe next week, maybe I'm gonna start my diet, maybe I'm gonna start, quit smoking in a few years. There's always this thing as if you had a ton of time, but you don't, right? Like that's the whole point. So when you realize that, instead of entering this panic of, oh my god, everything's gonna die, you're like, I'm gonna do it now because this is it.
Follow your instinct, yeah, because you can, like for example, you said you had to move property every 6 months in London. I know this is a trivial example. Every time you're really out of your comfort zone, but the good thing is you're not letting a routine just develop that will claim you, and you become subordinate to it. So I think you, just looking at the way when you moved to study music in England, you were already doing that without knowing it, weren't you? You were constantly being upended and upending your living environment. Obviously, you've moved back to Mexico City in 2013. But you're right, you can just overthink things, can't you? If you have this great idea, sometimes, that saying, follow your gut instinct. It must be liberating if you've got the courage to do that. I don't think I've ever done that. When I look at entrepreneurs, I just think, not for me. I don't think I could ever live and not have a guaranteed salary. I just am not that person. I wouldn't say I'm a coward, but I'm not courageous. I wouldn't take that leap. And Marthalla's just saying that, isn't it? If you think this is right, go ahead and do it. You're not going to have a chance next year, possibly. You've got to do it now in this moment.
And at the end of the day, also, who cares if it doesn't happen? Who cares if you fail? Because at the end of the day, you're gonna end up in the same box. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
So, and you were saying that, of course, you were mentioning when I moved to England and stuff, but also, not go too far. When I decided to start a new page that on my career as well, that was something similar as well. Just taking a risk for something that's already established, something that that has been there, and you know what, I'm gonna go here, and this is it. But it also makes it super interesting and super exciting, and at the end of the day, I'm gonna end up in the same place, so I might as well just do something about that. So I think the message is kind of coming across about what was going through my head, and it ended up bleeding into this lyrics of this record, for sure. But it's good that the message is coming across that is a positive message. It's not a negative message. And I think that change of paradigm is sometimes difficult because in the Western world, this idea of death is like the absolute worst thing in the world. And this, there's something that we avoid, terror management theory, right? But it can have a positive outcome to think about it.
Yeah, no, I agree. And it does, even though there's aggression in this music, we're talking, it's progressive metal. You're right. I think that does come through, certainly for me as well. I think that's what surprised me, why it's a black and white, like grayish front cover, the artwork. I was expecting green and orange and pastel colors, for the cover art for the record.
Yeah, I mean, that was interpretation of Hijam. That's Hijam Hansi who did the cover. His Siemens friend, and we just sent him the music, and it was like, dude, do your thing. Like he really loved the album. He got really inspired by also the Aztec, the solar stone, which some people call the Aztec calendar, but that's incorrect. So he actually used we have this emblem, which is the one that looks like a maze on the front cover. That's a Temic emblem. Not everyone or not many people have figured out yet, but eventually people will figure it out. So that was his interpretation on the record, on the music, and we really like what he did. So I don't think anyone had a clear idea in terms of the imagery of the record. Personally, I'm not a very visual person. I don't think too much in terms of I don't have a clear vision for those kind of things, for images. So we're very happy with his interpretation. That was his creative contribution to the record.
Yeah, I'm definitely not critical of his end product. It is a wonderful front cover. I've just got two more questions then, Diego, before we wrap up this interview. So you've left one band, A.D.K, and you're in another international band. So we know that Eric obviously is American. Is Simon Swedish or Danish?
No, Norwegian.
Norwegian, damn it. Sorry, that's going to offend him.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, no, can you believe that?
It's a super cool
I mentioned we're wrong. I know. I'm sorry, Simon, about that. And then Frederick's Norwegian, isn't he?
Yeah.
Yes, right, okay. So why did you decide to record the album in Sweden?
Well, what we recorded in Sweden was the drums and the vocals, or the lead vocals only. The main reason was because Simon is good friends with Jacob Herman, who is the engineer that runs Top Floor Studios in Gothenburg, Sweden. And he's known him for a long time. He really likes his sound. Simon is very particular about his sound too. He hates this new era of music where everything is not real. You have quantized drums and quantized guitars, and the whole era of the Instagram musician, right? That everyone has a studio with no cables and nice LED lights, and everyone plays, and you're like, that's quantized. That clearly is quantized. This is kind of the filters, the face filters, but for musician. So Simon is really against that whole thing. He wants to kind of keep the product real, and he knows that Jacob Herman is very good with the tones he provides and the sound he creates, and he trusts him with Blind Nine. So he was very vocal about, I want to record here, I want to record in Gothenburg in Sweden. And it's very nice because he told me it has accommodation on top of the studio, and it's a very nice theater. I don't know if you saw, but yesterday we released this acoustic version of Acts of Violence, which was recorded at that theater. I don't know if you've seen this, but
Oh,
it
I've
just
never
came
seen
out
that yet.
yesterday.
I'll check that out.
That just came out yesterday. So that was the main reason, and Jacob also trusted us with his studio. So during the day, Simon was recording drums, and then we had the shift change. So I would come in the evening and with Fredrik, and I will be on the control room recording vocals until like 3-4 in the morning. And we only had 10 days to record the whole album. I was producing the vocals, and I am very thorough, so it was very stressful. I mean, it was great, but it was, oh my god, I don't think we're gonna have enough time to do it, but we did. It was very good. So that's the reason, and it's only 5 hours drive from Oslo. So I flew to Oslo, and I went with Simon and Fredrik. We drove from Oslo to Gothenburg.
Interesting. Okay, yeah. I
Yeah.
understand why that would be the natural choice. So, final question then.
Yeah, sure.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Utrecht, the Netherlands,
Yeah.
3rd of February next year. Is that your
Yeah.
debut live performance at the Midwinter Prog Festival?
Correct. Yes. As we speak right now, I'm programming all my sounds for playing live. We have the set list ready and everything. First time we play live. It's very exciting. It's been a long time since I have the butterflies. The first day butterflies, which is very cool. But yeah, I forgot as well how long it takes me to program sounds to play live. I don't use backing tracks live. I play everything, and sometimes you probably heard the record. There's a ton of stuff happening, so it's like playing chess and trying to figure out how the hell I'm gonna be playing all that stuff live. But it's a lot of fun. Everyone's super excited. So yeah, we just booked flights last week, and there's more shows to come. We haven't announced them yet, but we have more shows to come. And yeah, I think the next frontier really for this band to be a fully breathing band is the shows, right? Like now, first was getting the music, and we're working in the dark, getting the band together, getting management, getting the label, finally release the singles, and now the album is out. And then I think the final frontier to move to the next phase is the live shows, until Temic is fully born. So that's the next step. I'm super excited about that.
Excellent. I was going to say, can we expect more than one show after this debut performance in Utrecht? And clearly that's likely to happen. So hopefully there'll be a European, North American world tour. Come on, A.D.K were always big in Germany, weren't they? So I imagine you're going to have to play Germany with Temic.
I mean, I will imagine so. It really, well, I don't know if the indication of the A.D.K fan base is going to be the same as the Temic fan base, because simply it's not the same. Like it will have been very silly of me to depart one adventure to start another one that sounds exactly like that. The band has a different identity, and yeah, it's been very interesting. That we hit the charts. I think I don't remember what place in the Netherlands. I think we're in first the top 5, or I don't remember. The Netherlands. I last week I had an interview with Metal Hammer from Hungary, and we were rated album number 2, just below Tesseract for the whole album from the whole editors. So
Wow.
it depends. It's been very interesting to see all the reviews and all the response from it. I don't particularly know what's going on in Germany, but I will assume so. But you never know with these things. And Germany is one of my absolute favorite countries as well. I mean, at some point I even was trying to learn some German, but I gave up. Too difficult. But it's really cool. So we'll see. New shows will be announced, and always the first. We're in a kind of particular situation as well, because it's the first album, right? And normally, when you are established band, well, the moment you're finishing the record, you finish recording the record, you start looking into the tour. But in this case, it's the first record, so it's kind of doing it in the inverse way, that the record comes out and then the shows start kind of coming, the show offers start coming up, and that's what's been going on as well here on this end.
Excellent. Yep. So hopefully our viewers go and check out the album. So just a reminder, Temic, Terror Management Theory, released via Season of Mist. It's available on vinyl, CD. You can obviously stream it on Deezer, Apple Music, Spotify, all the platforms. It came out on the 17th of November, so it's a recent release. And I encourage you, go there if you like Tesseract, if you like Pain of Salvation, all these great progressive bands that basically have no boundaries, no rules, and a lot of space in their music. This is going to be perfect for you. So yeah, Diego, absolute honor to have you on the channel. Thank you very much for joining us.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.